they'll be lost for decades. Now, I understand elections have consequences, and the president certainly has the right to put forth a nominee. But Americans have a strong sense of fairness, and they know fast-tracking a justice on the bench is not the right thing to do in the midst of votes being cast in a presidential election, not to mention in the middle of a pandemic. And if Republicans go down this road and it's not clear that they can hold on to the 4 Republican senators they'll need along the way, they are going to pay a heavy price with voters, make no mistake. For now, we have to fight for fairness. That's what this is about. And make sure that all of our friends and neighbors know what's at stake. If Trump and the Republican Senate hijack the Supreme Court seat before the voters have their say, we will lose our protections for pre-existing health provisions. We'll lose a woman's right to control her body and countless other rights that ensure we have a safe planet and a workplace free from discrimination. Ruth Bader Ginburg devoted her life to the fight for equality. And even when the odds were against her, and they almost always were, she put her head down and she powered on. That's why today we can all stand on her shoulders, and the shoulders of millions of other women and men who made similar sacrifices for the cause of a more perfect and just union. To honor this woman, one that generations will lovingly know as the notorious RBG, we must fight like hell to protect all the ideals to which she devoted her life. We owe this amazing, brilliant woman at least that much. We owe our daughters, our granddaughters, our sisters, our mothers, our grandmothers and aunties at least that much. We also owe it to the frontline workers to pass swift and substantive COVID relief, which is also hanging in the balance right now. We're only in session, planned to be in session for another 2 weeks. And McConnell continues to block the vital relief that Americans need so that we can do what needs to be done to crush this virus, which they've only proposed half measures at best for the last couple of months. McConnell continues to block the relief that Americans need that is vital so that we can do what we need to do to make sure that we can stitch that safety net tighter than we have. McConnell's abandoned our state and local government heroes and utterly ignored the millions of families facing hunger and homelessness. Democrats were willing to cut $1.2 trillion from the HEROES Act that we passed over 120 days ago at this point, if the White House would add $1 trillion to the Senate bill. And they've refused. Yet Senate Republicans in the White House are continuing to reject our offers of compromise. You know, it's not like we're digging in hard and saying it's got to be my way or the highway. We are attempting to compromise because we know what's at stake for millions of people. And instead, the Senate GOP continues to move further away from what is needed. So the only thing Republicans seem willing to fast track is an assault on fairness and hard-fought rights that so many Americans fought for. So Democrats are not going to stop fighting for all the hardworking Americans that we represent, especially those who are at risk every day, or for the ideals that women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg devoted her life to. Make no mistake, this fight is far from over. It is only just beginning. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Congressman Ted Deutsch. Ted?
Thanks very much, Debbie. Thanks for doing this. And thanks everyone for joining. Lois, it's good to see you as well. I think this is really important. It's an important moment this morning after we lost a trailblazing pioneer in the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And we're at the moment now where Floridians need to understand exactly where we are and exactly where their senators, Rick Scott and Marco Rubio, are, and whether they're choosing to put their allegiance to Donald Trump over what's consistent with our history and what's best for our country. This is a failure right now of our 2 senators to grasp and to respond to the moment we're in. And I'm particularly concerned that it's a failure to respect the voters' say in what happens next. First, we're all still waiting on Rick Scott and Marco Rubio to come to the aid of struggling Americans. Their constituents, our constituents, small business owners, first responders, teachers, states and local communities, and those whose benefits expired at the end of July are still waiting for the Senate to act. And the message that they're getting from Mitch McConnell is the same message that they're getting from Rick Scott and from Marco Rubio, and that is that they should deal with it. They should figure it out themselves because there's no help coming from the United States Senate, and there's no responsibility on the part of their senators to actually act on behalf of all Floridians. As Debbie points out, 4 months after we passed the HEROES Act, it is clear that they just simply do not prioritize providing relief for their constituents, no matter how desperate the needs might be. So they ignore calls for help from their constituents, but when President Trump calls them to attention, they dutifully respond. So the question is whether Marco Rubio and Rick Scott really understand and value Florida's voters, and also understand that this is a moment to respect our democracy and what the voters say, and that their votes matter. We have a presidential election in 6 weeks. Americans are going to make their voices heard. They'll exercise the most powerful tool in our democracy. And it takes on average 70 days, just looking at the Supreme Court now, from when a justice is nominated until they're confirmed. And the idea that we would rush to make a lifetime appointment to our highest court, either now just in advance of an election, or rushing to make a lifetime appointment by a newly defeated president who may then be confirmed by outgoing senators whose voters just voted to replace them, that poses a challenge to our public's faith in our institution. We have elections, they matter. We should respect the election process and prepare for this upcoming vote. And just in case there's any question about Marco Rubio's principled stance, let me repeat his words from 2016. And I quote, "I don't think we should be moving forward with a nominee in the last year of a president's term. I would say that," Marco said back then, "even if it was a Republican president," close quote. And Senator Rubio pointed out that nominating a new justice nearly a year before a swearing in was too soon. So now he ought to answer to his constituents why it's too short, why just about a year is too short, but 6 weeks is perfectly okay. It's not just about hypocrisy. It's about a failure to respect the will of the people by President Trump, by Senator Scott, and by Senator Rubio, whose own words show us that the will of the people and our democracy seems to matter less than the will of Donald Trump. This is an opportunity for the American people to have a say in who they think should be nominated to the Supreme Court and who they want in office to confirm that nominee. There are a lot of important issues before the Supreme Court, like the president's effort to take away health care from 1.8 million Floridians and to scrap protections for pre-existing conditions. This will also be the voters' chance to tell President Trump that they don't like his assault on our health care. We should be doing everything we can to ensure the will of the voters is respected. The question is, as we go forward, not only for the president, but for Senator Rubio and Senator Scott, about whether they're going to recognize this moment, this critical moment in our democracy, and do what's best to respect that democracy, or simply do what's best as they perceive it for Donald Trump. And I'm so glad to have this opportunity, Debbie. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it back to you.
All right, Mike, you want to go ahead and make your announcement, and then we'll go to Lois.
Yes, to members of the media, if you have a question after Congresswoman Frankel makes her remarks, you can raise your hand in the chat function, or you can write your question in Q&A and we'll read it out loud. You can raise your hand and we'll call on you, and you can say it verbally or write it in Q&A, and I will read it out loud for the members after Congresswoman Frankel speaks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good to be with you all. Thank you, Representative Wasserman-Schultz and Representative Deutsch. And you laid out many of the important issues that are facing us. I don't want to repeat them too much. So I want to focus on Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And first to say that I'm joining all Americans who are mourning the loss of, we call her RBG, and at the same time we're celebrating her life. She was a true icon of women's rights movement and an ardent defender of equality for all. Here's the thing. There's a real irony in this situation. RBG's life as a litigator and as a jurist advanced women and girls in this nation like never before. And yet her death may mean a giant step backwards like never before, especially if Donald Trump has his way. RBG was a fierce defender for women's rights. In her own words, she said, "My mother told me to be a lady, and for her, that meant be your own person, be independent." And boy, as a litigator and as a jurist, RBG made sure that women would be independent. She helped ensure women could get a credit card in their own names, that they could serve on juries, they could administer states, that they could get equal housing benefits when they were in the military, and of course, when she was on the Supreme Court, staunchly defending abortion rights and LGBT rights. So what's at stake? My colleagues outline some of the key issues. I just want to emphasize whether or not the Affordable Care Act remains in place and how that affects women, pre-existing conditions before the ACA insurance companies could say women, really, we were pre-existing conditions. Gender ratings were allowed. In the ACA, insurance companies now cannot charge out-of-pocket costs to women's maternity coverage and preventative services such as birth control and women visits. And the ACA contains the first ever federal prohibition on sex discrimination in healthcare, protecting women and LGBT people. And it also, for our families, allows young people to be covered by their parents' insurance up to age 26. The ACA has been very important in the advancement of women and girls, and that is at stake with this next Supreme Court. And then, of course, women's reproductive freedom. And in her own words, this is what RBJ said. "This is something central to a woman's life, to her dignity. It's a decision that she must make for herself. And when government controls that decision for her, she's being treated as less than a fully adult human responsible for her own choices." And of course, as my colleague said, there is so much more. And I join with their comments at saying that the American people deserve to have the voice in selection of the next Supreme Court justice, because so much is at stake. And the vacancy, being so close to the election, should not be fulfilled until after the election. And let's give the people in filling this next spot. And with that, I yield back.
Mike, you can go ahead and ask the questions.
All right, so our first question is from Greg Allen from NPR.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I wonder, we heard from House Speaker Pelosi yesterday that there's lots of arrows in the quiver. And one thing that's been discussed is this idea of going to impeachment again. Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, is that something that you would have considered, and how would that possibly help in this situation?
I mean, I think we need to leave the all the quivers in all the arrows in our quiver and all the tools in the toolbox. Pursuing impeachment could be pursued on so many different egregious, outrageous violations of our Constitution, and things that are a long list of high crimes and misdemeanors that President Trump appears to have committed. So if we were going to go down that road, we would be well within our responsibility to do that, given the assault on our Constitution and the abandonment of any principle or integrity that amount to those high crimes and misdemeanors. But beyond that, more broadly, the tools that are available should remain available, and that's how much is at stake in this election.
Can I just add one thing to that, Debbie, if I may? We're going to consider what steps to take going forward, and no decisions have been made. But I just hope that over the next few days, we'll pay close attention to the words of Senator Graham the last time this issue arose, when it was not just weeks before an election, and the words of Senator Rubio, and recognize that at a time when we are just weeks away from an election, it's imperative that the people have their say. Everyone understood that. Lindsey Graham understood that when he made that same argument a year before an election. We're weeks away. I hope that no consideration need be given to anything other than respect for the institutions in our country and the democracy and the people's right to have a say in the direction that we go and who's going to be the president who ought to be appointing justices to the United States Supreme Court for the rest of their lives.
All right. Our next question is from Skylar Swisher with the Sun Sentinel. He asks, what are your thoughts about Judge Barbara Lagoa and her record? How do you think she would rule on abortion, healthcare, and other key issues if she were to be named to the Supreme Court?
You know, let's be very clear. Barbara Lagoa just tossed out the votes and had absolutely no willingness to consider that the wishes of 60%, 63% of Florida's voters when they determined that former felons should get their voting rights back upon completion of their sentences. And so she doesn't appear to have any regard for the will of the people. I wouldn't expect her to have much integrity when making decisions if she were to be appointed to the Supreme Court.
So what concerns me, if I listened to an interview by the president when asked about her, and he said he didn't know her, but she's from Florida. And I think what should be concerning to everyone is that this appointment be based upon the Florida's electoral votes, which obviously is what the president is most concerned about, is that. And so, rather than qualifications.
I want to just add another thing. I'm sorry, Ted, were you going to say something? Okay. The other thing is that the president needs to tread very carefully because, when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, we have the most people who have signed up for Affordable Care Act policies in the country. Obamacare is very popular in the state of Florida. And so if he bases this choice on who he is trying to persuade in one state like ours, I think he does that at his peril, because there will be plenty of moderate voters, even conservative voters, who aren't going to take too kindly to a justice on the Supreme Court who will likely pull the net out from under them and their health care. I think the president makes that choice at his peril.
Do any other members of the media have a question? Please raise your hand, or you can write it in the Q&A function. All right, there are no more questions, Congresswoman.
Okay, thank you all very much. Ted, Lois, thank you so much. We'll see you later, and have a good day, everybody. Thank you.